Suppose you had a conversation with another human being who told you, no, I don't use paper because I have too much respect for the bears. What do you mean, you might say in reply? Why would your relationship with bears, why would your concern about the welfare and well-being of bears prevent you from using a piece of paper? Well, you see, in order to make paper, human beings cut down forests. And that deprives bears of their habitat. So, if I'm concerned about harm and well-being for bears, how can I possibly use a piece of paper? Now, this conversation would be understandable if you were talking to a 5-year-old. What if you're talking to a fully grown adult with a university degree in philosophy who is a leader in the vegan movement? What if this excuse or concern is being employed in the context of justifying the use of makeup that contains animal products, purchasing leather boots and shoes once every few years, eating and consuming animal products from time to time while still using the name vegan? That's preposterous, you say. Nobody would be stupid enough to say that. Or if someone did, it must be some very obscure and minor and trivial figure in the movement. Well, no, it's not. It's with a heavy heart, once again, that I have to criticize two of the most influential idiots in the vegan movement in the year 2018. Unnatural Vegan and Vegan Gains. They're both idiots. This has been a contest of stupid versus dumb. And it's impossible for me to say which one is better or which one is worse because they're both awful. What is the difference between refusing to use palm oil and refusing to use olive oil? What is the difference between a palm tree that produces a fruit that you crush to make oil and a palm tree that produces dates that you pick, wash, package, and eat? They all destroy animal habitat. To a large extent, they even destroy the same animal's habitat. But #speciesism. Even if it's not the same type of primate, it's not the same orangutan, it's not the same species of monkey or what have you that's being put out of house and home, even if you're comparing bears to monkeys to camels to orangutans, as vegans, we're at least supposed to care about all large primates that have eyes and complex brains just about equally. So it's not like you can say, oh, well, it's only orangutans we care about, and it's not the other types of monkeys and this other. It's completely, laughably, deeply, morally incoherent. And have any of you guys even seen a palm tree? Have you seen one of these palm trees that produces the fruit crushed to make oil? Have you walked around a grove? You can look it up on YouTube and have beautiful, detailed videos of people walking around a grove of these trees. The type of palm trees that make the fruit crushed for oil. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's not nature. It's not a forest. It's not the wilderness. Neither is a grove of olive oil trees. Neither is a commercially maintained forest that's cut down for the pulp and paper industry, that's planted and replanted and cut down to make pulp and paper that's turned into newsprint, booklets, what have you. Okay? And yes, cutting down one type of forest or even just maintaining it as a crop is going to impact bears. The other is going to impact monkeys, orangutans, or what have you. What is so fundamentally stupid about a grown adult claiming that they refuse to buy paper because they want to help the bears is that even if everyone joined you in your moronic mission to eliminate paper from your daily life, it would not help a single bear. 10 million people can go back to using chalkboards. We can give up the modern convenience we've come to rely on of the paper booklet. We can give up reading books entirely. We can communicate by braille etched into stone, and it won't help even one bear. Because the forest you're talking about that's now growing trees to be made into paper will instead switch to growing another profitable crop or commodity. It won't be turned back into bear habitat. Never. Why is it palm oil and not maple syrup? Why don't you tell me maple syrup is murder? Think of the elk, think of the deer, think of the moose, think of the bears. Think of the huge forests being cut down, both to create the wood that's burned to boil away the maple syrup. If you don't know the process, look it up. And the trees that directly produce the sap. There are two types of forests that are maintained for this. One of which is chopped down and one of which is maintained more long-term, just to produce maple syrup. Because if everyone, not just vegans, if all the meat eaters decide it's a moral obscenity to buy paper or to buy maple syrup, that land will not revert to the wilderness. In Indonesia, in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Laos, if it's not profitable to grow one type of palm tree that produces oil, they will grow another type of palm tree, quite possibly date palms. And I have never heard a vegan argue that for ethical reasons you shouldn't eat dates because you have to cut down a fucking forest in the first place to plant the dates, you idiots! If we all stop eating dates, they'll grow something else. If you want to help the bears or help the orangutans, you have to do something positive. You can't just keep doing something negative, like looking at your fridge and saying, what can I subtract to make the world a better place? It's moronic. Especially if it is for the animals. That's the biggest joke of all here. And honestly, I don't think any vegans are smart enough to be laughing at it. I don't think the meat eaters are smart enough to make fun of us for it. Nobody realizes how absurd this is. Major leaders in the vegan movement, both of them were wrong on this. Vegan Gains, Richard, and Unnatural Vegan, Swayze. She's sitting there, what? I don't know. You'd have to do the math. You'd have to figure out how much harm and suffering is caused by palm oil. You'd have to, I really haven't looked into it, but you are willing to accept the excuse that someone who's vegan can keep on calling themselves vegan while eating 4 chocolate bars and a few donuts and buying leather boots and using makeup with animal products. You said buying several containers once every couple of months, however much it takes, and they can still be vegan, and that's fine. That's moral and positive and good, and we should all applaud that and appreciate that. Okay? What is the moral difference with the same plot of land if it stops being oil palms and starts being date palms? What is the difference? I lived in this climate. I was engaged in humanitarian work and research. I've been out on those farms. What is the moral difference between a palm oil plantation and a rubber plantation? They're both plantations. Neither one provides habitat for monkeys or orangutans or bears. They provide money for human beings who try to exploit that land as economically efficiently as possible. And the reason why palm oil is so popular is that it is one of the most economically efficient crops on the planet. Compared to any other oil crop, it's mind-blowing. That's one of the reasons that people look into it in terms of biodiesel and fuel to replace gasoline. That has not worked out, but there have been a lot of studies. There was hope from ecologists in the past that we could make some kind of transition like that. Okay? Look at the same piece of land covered with palm trees growing oil versus a plantation growing rubber versus a plantation growing dates. What is the ethical difference? Now let's look at the same piece of land that's keeping cows in captivity from the day they're born till the day they die on a concrete floor under a steel shed with a human hand that's inserted in their anus periodically, so a needle is inserted in the vagina to artificially inseminate them, to keep them constantly pregnant, to produce milk so that a vegan like Kal-El can eat a chocolate bar and have popcorn at a movie theater. Do you see an ethical difference between what's happening with that piece of land, an ethical difference and an ecological difference, and in a palm oil plantation? Where would you rather take your kids for a fucking picnic? You'd rather go to the palm oil plantations are beautiful. They're olive oil plantations are gorgeous. Okay? Sitting down in a dairy farm and watching the slow motion atrocity going on around you, and the stench and the filth and the runoff and the poo and the urine and the flies and the hormones hanging in the air and the misery and the moans of the cattle, and even the human component, what it does to the employees, what they do with their lives, compared to being someone that gathers fruit from the vines of a tree or whatever, the branches of a tree, as the case may be. You don't think this is a significant difference? Then why are you vegan? In what sense are these people vegan? In this same context, and unchallenged by vegan gains, Unnatural Vegan, Swayze, Unnatural Vegan said so casually that scientifically she's not even sure if insects are sentient. She said that insects probably aren't sentient anyway. Sentient? I do not think she even knows the meaning of the word sentient. Talking about a bee, talking about an ant. We're talking about animals that you can put under an X-ray, under an MRI, under a scanning electron microscope, and see what a fabulously complex brain they have. Animals with huge eyes, with complex behaviors, social behaviors, exploration, mapping, communication, proven use of language. Animals that engage in warfare. One tribe of ants going to war with another tribe, which is beautiful and, deeply disturbing to witness, by the way, if you see ants going to war with one another. It's been written about for centuries, too. I think we have going back to ancient texts, but I remember Henry David Thoreau trying to write poetically about witnessing the war of the ants in his little patch of forest. Okay? Amazingly complex behaviors. And it's a proof of language. And you're questioning sentience. You're not questioning whether or not they can dream. You're not questioning whether or not they have imagination. You're questioning their sentience as a vegan making excuses for Kal-El's use of makeup that has the bodies of crushed up insects in it to make its shade of red a little bit more appealing. There are meat eaters who will tell you with complete conviction that they think chickens are not sentient. And it's laughable for the same reason. Sentience is not intelligence. It's not higher cognitive ability. Sentience just means they feel and perceive the world around them, period. If you can hold up the color red and hold up the color white and the animal reacts differently, you can hold up a mirror. There are all kinds of simple tests. That's all it takes. That's sentience. The hurdle for sentience is incredibly low. If they feel or perceive the world and react to stimuli, that's it. You've got sentience. Bees and ants, basically anything we can perceive as insects, as human beings, there is no scientific debate about whether or not they're sentient. Shame on you, Unnatural Vegan, for using the same bullshit excuses that meat eaters use for killing chickens and for killing fish. And in these cases, there is no difference. It is just as easy to prove or disprove bird intelligence, ant and bee intelligence. There is no difference here. And to my knowledge, Vegan Gains and others, nobody else confronted her on this. Nobody else called her on this. And this is yet another example of her using quote-unquote science made up off the top of her head, pulled out of her ass, complete lies to justify her momentary hypocritical convenience. Is Kal-El that good looking? Like, I have double standards too. I always disagree with Isaac about this. I disagree with this. Sure, I have double standards. I treat good looking women differently than, ugly and repulsive women, or just kind of, I do. I'm self-critical about it. But like, Unnatural Vegan, who are you trying to fuck that you stoop so low and tell these lies so that this bitch can rub the color red on her cheeks with the mushed up bodies of dead animals, so she can wear a pair of boots that she thinks are cute? If you were in love with her, if you were dating her, I can understand you wanting to make those excuses. But the most basic minimum demand veganism makes on you is that we stop making those excuses for others we love, and we stop making those excuses for ourselves. That we answer to some kind of higher standard here. Unnatural Vegan, I don't know who you are trying to fuck. You are fucking up the movement. You have somehow slid into a position of power and influence here with no wit and no charm and nothing to offer but one banal product review of another of vegan butter and vegan ice cream and this garbage. If you sincerely don't know that ants and bees are sentient, why would you employ it as an excuse in this context? Why wouldn't there just be a little bit of hesitancy in you to Google this or have some kind of precautionary principle rather than condemning, I can't even say condemning insects to death? I guess it's the same basis that you condemn the cows to death that the leather boots are made of. You fundamentally just do not give a fuck. Well, look, hey, veganism, say this, it's a movement for people who give a fuck. And I sympathize with the tendency, even if it's irrational on the other side, I sympathize with the perfectionistic tendency to want to throw out all the palm oil in your kitchen because you think this is how you can make the world a better place. But the tragedy is you can't. To make the world a better place, you have to take positive action. You have to go to your government and lobby and say, government, I need you to draw a line on the map and say bear habitat. And we need to get rid of all the farms and all the economic exploitation. It needs to be devoted to helping the bears. And in Indonesia or Cambodia, we need to draw a square on the map and say, hey, this is a special place that's just monkey habitat or just orangutan habitat. This is a national park. That's what will actually help those animals survive. They're never going to be helped by you throwing out palm oil and buying olive oil instead. If you regard that as evil, it's the same evil. This is a completely ineffectual, morally incoherent pseudo-philosophy. The ethics of intention argument offered by Vegan Gains does not work. I've engaged with it before when Gary Francione tried to use it. It's nonsense. Tragically, the ethics of harm reduction argument that Unnatural Vegan offers also doesn't work. And I think that her approach comes out of a fundamental reluctance to deal with the tragedy of human and animal life on Earth. It's tragic and disturbing to really realize that there are millions of cows living in misery and captivity, etc., etc. But it's also tragic and disturbing to recognize intelligence, not just sentience, but real reflective intelligence in the minds of ants and bees, and realize that when we go to build a new house, we will without hesitation destroy ant colonies, not even think twice about it. That we have such total indifference to life, intelligence, and feeling when it just appears in a form that doesn't have facial expressions that we can easily sympathize with. And the deeper tragedy still that vitiates veganism, and I think vitiates almost every political movement, that in order to do something good, you have to embrace doing harm. And very often the harm is knowable and certain, and the positive outcomes you're pursuing are very uncertain. You have to commit to starting a war in Vietnam because you're trying to prevent communism from carrying out more mass murder, such as they had a long record of doing all around the world at that point. There were people who supported the Vietnam War for sincere, well-informed, ethical reasons. They were trying, to use Swayze's logic, to use this bullshit utilitarian logic, they were trying to reduce harm. They were trying to avert suffering. And if you had been alive at that time and you knew the history of communism from 1917 to 1955, you also might have been one of those people saying, no, we can't let this happen again. We have to prevent a tragedy that's going to kill millions of people. Guess what the outcomes were? The United States dropped more bombs on Laos. Laos is a tiny country in Southeast Asia. The United States dropped more bombs on Laos than they dropped on all of Germany in World War II, more than they dropped on all of Japan during World War II, more than they dropped on those two countries combined, on a tiny, poverty-stricken country in Southeast Asia, and they still lost the war. The communists still took over. This is where the logic of harm reduction will take you. It'll take you down that rabbit hole, and it'll take you down the rabbit hole of trying to throw away all the paper in your house and all the palm oil, because who are you to impose on the bears? Vegan movement is growing, but it's growing on feet of clay. It's on philosophical foundations that are rotten and self-contradictory and laughable. And I see that fundamental stupidity coming out of the best known leaders of our movement, whether it's somebody like Gary Francione, who puts on a suit and tie, Vegan Gaines, who puts on a wife beater t-shirt, shows off his muscles, or I don't know, Unnatural vegan, who puts on her makeup with a trowel and tries to kiss up to Kal-El, whatever the hell it is that's going on there. Okay? We're going to find our way forward with this movement because we have to. We don't have a choice. We don't have a better alternative. There's only so much water and so much land on the planet, and we can reduce our impact in terms of land use by over 70% by just convincing our fellow human beings to stop eating beef that's produced by cows eating soybeans and directly eat the soybeans themselves, etc., etc. The knock-on effects for economic efficiency and ecological outcomes that veganism can offer. This is the most obvious and the most inevitable political cause in the history of the world. But what we have is a method in search of a political philosophy. That's the awkward stage that we're at. Everybody knows what the diet is. Everybody knows how to do it. But they don't know why, and they don't know how to market it to the public yet. Let me tell you something. Making a hypocrite of yourself, making excuses for leather shoes if they're cute enough, or red lipstick if it's red enough, or movie theater popcorn if it's convenient enough, it's not going to be the future. The way to earn the respect of the general public is not going to be to prove that your principles and convictions are a goddamn joke.